Welcome back to the Highlight Your Healing podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Roan. My guest today is Liz, the voice behind the Healing Hearts podcast, a space born out of her own journey of loss. She's created a space for real, honest conversations about grief, motherhood, healing, and the kind of connection that reminds us we're never alone in what we're carrying. Her work centers around supporting women, navigating life after loss, and reminding them that their story still matters. So Liz, I just want to say thank you so much for being here and for the space you've created for so many women through the work that you're doing.
Thank you for having me so much. I am so excited to be here, and it's been an honor to get to know you over the last several months as well.
Yeah, you and I, we've had the opportunity just to collaborate on a few projects, including one of your books,
Yes.
Held in Our Hearts, and most recently an article in the Get Griefy magazine. And like I said, it's just been such a pleasure just partnering with you as we both share our stories and just helping other women feel seen and supported.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't agree more.
So before we get into today's conversation, I would just love for you to start by introducing yourself and just telling us a little more about who you are and then walking us through your journey.
Sure, absolutely. You did a beautiful job introducing myself and the podcast. So thank you for that. Like she said, my name is Liz. I am the host of the Healing Hearts podcast, where we share the real, the raw, griefy stories. Created the space out of just wanting to have an open conversation about grief. And that like every story matters and every story deserves to be heard if you want it to be heard. That's kind of like the mantra behind Healing Hearts podcast. But my story starts with the loss of my daughter, Olivia. In 2008, July 23rd, Olivia was born with a slight heartbeat and not breathing, where she would then immediately go to the NICU and spend the next 34 hours like on monitor and just see if anything would change. Unfortunately, nothing did. And so we did have to say goodbye to our little girl on July 24th. So she will be 18 in July, which is crazy to think about, that it's already almost been 18 years since that crazy, traumatic, life-changing, life-altering event occurred. She was a 40-week baby. I had a pretty uneventful pregnancy, gestational diabetes, but nothing to be concerned about and things like that. It just really was that last couple of minutes of pushing where she came out and, unfortunately, like I said, she was just with a slight heartbeat and not breathing. And we still don't really have answers as why it happened. Obviously, I've gone on to have 3 other beautiful children. And after we got pregnant with Zoe, after having Olivia, we did go through some additional testing and things like that just to see what could have been an issue. With every pregnancy, you're swabbed and tested for Group B strep. And I tested positive with Olivia. And we did have an autopsy done, and a medical examiner did determine that there could be a chance that Group B strep could have been part of the problem with Olivia's death. And moving on, having Zoe's pregnancy, I then did get tested for Group B strep pretty commonly, almost every 8 weeks, starting the minute I was pregnant. And I would test positive every 8 weeks, take a moxicillin or, the medicine, and then get tested again and still have, a high concentration of Group B strep. So the determination is that I probably have a higher concentration of this natural living organism that we could do all the testing in the world to find out if how much penicillin and how much medicine would be for me to be able to have a healthy baby vaginally. However, I was never going to have a baby vaginally again. We went for C-sections the route after that, just because how traumatic and how terrifying an idea of having a baby vaginally really was. And then so with Olivia's death and moving on, it was difficult. I'd say living life after loss is one of the hardest things you do. And then leading 10 years later, I also have lost both of my parents. And that's kind of led me to where I am today in this griefy world space of where I've created, the Healing Hearts podcast and just try to create spaces for people and women, especially in motherhood, because I'm navigating not only motherhood without a daughter, but I'm also navigating motherhood without my mom. And so it's kind of like dual in that sense. I'm very grateful that I had my mom for the loss of my daughter. But now that my kids are older and we're in these, all of these things that they're dealing with, I don't have her to call and say, how did you handle me getting my permit? Like my daughter just got her permit. She's 15 and she's going to be licensed to drive before I know it. And that's scary. So, yeah. So that's just a little bit of my story and where, how I got here.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And, obviously sorry, for all of your losses and sharing beautiful Olivia with us. So I want to take a step back really quick because you talked about a little bit about not knowing, what happened or what could have caused it. And a lot of times I hear with women who have lost a pregnancy or an infant, we want answers. So, we are left with the unknown or I'm not really sure questions. And I carry that for quite some time, still do sometimes, not really knowing what happened. So, thank you so much for sharing that. I want to also just go back and ask, what are some ways that helped you both mentally and emotionally during that time?
So, in the very beginning, I will say Olivia was a very unexpected pregnancy, for one. So she was not a planned pregnancy. We planned on having children, but my husband and I had just gotten married. So we were only married like 3 or 4 months when we got pregnant with Olivia. And it was a complete like, oh crap, this was not the plan. We embraced it. We were okay. My husband was still in school. He was in college and I had just graduated about a year before. So I was going to be a substitute teacher, and he was going to be in school. And so that's kind of the plan. We decided to make the plan would be I'd still teach, he'd still go to school, we'd find a babysitter. We had it all worked out. And then, it didn't work out the way we intended. And so he was still in school, and I tried to go back to work, which was very hard. I was a substitute teacher, and I would get tossed into a classroom that would have a little girl named Olivia. And although my daughter's name is spelled with an A, which is uncommon, um, even just the name Olivia would turn me into a spiral. And so I had to not sub. And so I spent a lot of time that first probably 6 to 7 months really just on the couch, not gonna lie, just being sad. And then I dove myself into being creative. Anything I could do, I did to honor Olivia that first year. I remember making for each month that she would have been. So, for Valentine's Day, we made a Valentine's Day wreath. I couldn't decorate her and dress her up in these pretty little dresses, but I could make a really cool wreath with really nice ribbon,
Right.
all of the things. And so that would go up on her grave and things like
I
that.
love that.
Yeah. So that's definitely one way that I feel like it turned my pain into art in some sense.
Right.
And I didn't even realize that that's what I was doing until years later. And it was like, well, that's how I got through it, is that figured out how to mother her even though she wasn't here. And didn't even realize that's what I was doing until, again, years later. And you look back and be like, well, you were mothering her in some way. It didn't feel that way at the moment because we were just trying to survive.
Yeah, I love that. So, are there ways now that you and your family are still honoring Olivia's life?
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about her all the time. She's very much a part of our family. She's got a picture, and just like the rest of the kids have pictures on the wall. Zoe knew that she had an older sister. By the time she was 1.5, 2, she was calling her Sissy. There's no arguments on that. We that first year after Olivia at Christmas time, we're supposed to have a 5-month-old, and we don't. And so I was pretty much boycotting Christmas. Didn't want to celebrate. And my family, one thing is really great is we had a very supportive family. They were okay with whatever we needed to do. And my mom had this idea. She used to have a teddy bear tree that she would set up every year. And it was about 6 feet and full of white lights and garland and usually teddy bear ornaments. And went to visit my mom one year around then. And she was like, maybe, she gave me the tree just in case. Because sometimes moms know a little better than we do. And lo and behold, one night sitting in the apartment in the middle of December and it's cold. We were in Wisconsin, so it's cold, it's dreary, and it's dark. I was like, all right, let's put up this tree and see what it does. And it illuminated the whole room, these beautiful white
Wow.
lights. It was just, and so that was the first moment where I was like, we can put ornaments that remind us of Olivia on this tree.
Right.
And so it became our Olivia angel tree. And we still have Olivia's Angels tree that we set up every year. It's the first thing that goes up to celebrate the holiday season. It used to be up like right after Thanksgiving. It's gotten earlier and earlier every year. So like, I think like this year we set it up by like November 6th. Like it was ridiculous how early it went up. Halloween came down. It was like Olivia comes up.
Uh-huh.
But it's one of our favorite things as a family to do. And we all look forward to it. We do it as a family. And so that's one really big way. And again, it's just constantly talking about her. She's just constantly a part of who we are. She's their sister. They will make comments about, I wish Olivia was here. I wish Olivia didn't have to die. I could have gotten to know Olivia, and those are all things that are okay and healthy for them to question and wish and wonder. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I love the angel tree and how you all are continuing to honor her life. So, as you mentioned, she would be 18 this year. So when, grief or those hard emotions start to resurface, how do you care for yourself now?
I let it. So grief's going to come in waves, this year, her being 18, it would be her senior year. There's a lot. I've definitely felt it a little more than I have, say, her 15th year, just because there are those bigger milestones that you're supposed to be kind of going through. And so I ride the wave for a while. You can't let it swallow you. You can't let it like drown you in a sense. You have to like ride it, but then know when the right time is to get off. And usually that right time to get off is when you get to go take a walk or you do something for yourself. I think that can look like anything. I mean, sometimes it can be a bath. Sometimes it can be lighting a candle. Sometimes it can be cuddling with one of my other kids. It doesn't really, I don't have a,
Yeah, it's not this one thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. It's just allow yourself to process and feel those emotions whenever they come up. So is there any advice that you would give to someone else who may be going through or navigating something similar?
Yeah. I mean, so if you're in the early stages and that early acute stage of grief, especially after losing a child, I would say it's, remind yourself it's okay. You're going to feel this way. No one's taught you how to grieve your baby. It's not something society teaches you. Not that anyone wants to teach you. I don't want to be, I'd much rather you not be part of this club. We talk about how it's like worst club, best people, because it is, you mess with one, you've mess with all of us. Um, um, but I would say it's okay to just take your time, those first few months, you don't know what to do and that's okay. And if you got up and took a shower and that's all you did, bravo, proud, that's
Absolutely. Yeah.
perfect.
It's
If,
hard to even just get off of the couch. So like you
yeah,
said, if you were
exactly.
able to make it to the shower or
Yeah,
to the
yeah,
bath,
yeah,
you know,
exactly. And if
that's
even if that takes days after. I mean, there's no right or wrong way. It's just you do what you need to do to get through. I would say it's important for you to try to move forward's not the right word, but like to just to keep, telling yourself one foot in step, one moment at a time,
Mm-hmm.
one foot in step of the other. I took a shower
Right.
today. That's enough.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow, if you take another shower, that's enough.
That's
You
enough.
know, um,
Absolutely.
but each thing you do will get you to move that needle to move you just a little bit more, and I think that's the important part, and it's okay if you do one thing one day and it takes you 4 more days to do it again. But as long as you do it again, then you're going to keep moving. It's not something you have to do every single day. It's just finding one thing that's going to keep you going every once in a while. It's going to keep moving you.
Yeah. Thank you, Liz. So, can you tell me a little bit about how your story has shaped the work that you're doing today, and why do you think it's so important for you to share your voice to help others?
My story shapes everything I do today. Yeah, I mean, after losing Olivia, there wasn't nearly as much as there is today. We didn't have the Instagram, and Facebook was more of that social, I did this today, and people would be like, oh, cool. It wasn't as informative and as, podcasts and all the things. And so, after I lost my parents in 2018 and 2020, my identity shifted because I now was no longer had my parents. I was no, like, in a sense, you felt like an orphan, and a lot of the grief that I had felt with my parents also cracked open new grief of Olivia because, there was just more resources and there's more ways to process than there was 18 years ago. And in all of that process, I just started to realize how important it is to share your story, how important it
Right.
is to have those Me Too moments with others. Whether you're a lost parent or you've lost parents or you've lost a sibling, all of the things, it's important that you can see yourself in someone else because then you can feel less alone and you're not isolated because loss can be very isolating. Grief can feel very isolated. And the more we talk about it, the more we're going to break down what society says is okay. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. Telling your story is healing. I just remember during my own journey during my pregnancy losses, I completely suffered in silence. Like you said, there wasn't a podcast, there wasn't Instagram or all of these great groups that we have today. I didn't talk about my journey. And quite frankly, I didn't have the support or the community, partly because I didn't talk about it. So I suffered in silence. So I'm just so thankful and grateful people like yourself and the Get Griefy community that we're all in. We're all out there talking about the hard stuff and letting others know that you are not alone. You don't have to suffer in silence. There are people that have gone through something similar that you've gone through, and, we can talk about it. So sharing your story is healing. For me, once I started to talk about it, it it felt like almost like not a release because you don't ever move forward from it, but it felt like it got easier to tell my story and knowing that I'm making an impact and knowing that I'm helping someone else just by putting language to what I've been through.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more with that. That like putting language to what we've been through, just making sure that shedding light in a dark space, all of
Hmm.
those things. And really just breaking down that barrier that loss and grief gets swept under the rug because loss and grief and all of that is one of the most universal things we're going to go through. You are going to go through some kind of loss, not necessarily loss of a loved one, but there are other losses that you're going to go through. Loss of a job, loss of lots of things, that then you're going to experience grief from that loss because that's what grief is. It's just the reaction to the loss, And so I find it so crazy how people don't want to talk about grief and loss, even though it is like everyone experiences it, you know?
I have found, just talking to a few clients or just a few friends and just in general, as you mentioned, there are other types of loss, things that we can grieve. And most people don't associate it with grief or don't think it's grief for, like you said, job loss. Job loss is grief too. And, some people just don't associate those things with grief. So, like I said, I'm so glad there's a community of us that we are, providing that education and talking about those things and the different types of losses, not that it's just a loss of a loved one. So is there anything else that you would hope that people take away from your journey?
Just that you're not alone, ultimately. There are other people out there that have gone through something similar to you. And if they haven't gone through something completely similar, I am a big believer in, we can feel a lot of the same feelings that other people are feeling in different types of loss. I can still feel the same. I can understand someone's anger from losing their job because I felt angry when I lost my daughter. Yes, it's different in the same that like your anger is much different than my anger, but I can still recognize that like you're valid in feeling that, and that's why I think it's so important that we talk about all the types of losses, because you really can have a Me Too moment with someone you didn't think you might be able to have a Me Too moment with.
Absolutely. Liz, thank you so much for sharing your story, and thank you for the space that you've created for other women who are walking through a loss that is often carried quietly. To the woman listening right now, maybe you've experienced infant or pregnancy loss. Maybe you're still trying to find the words for what you've been through. Maybe you're holding grief that people don't fully understand. I want you to know this. Your grief is real. Your baby mattered. Your story matters, and you are not alone in this. So Liz, before we close, can you share with our listeners where they can connect with you and learn more about you and the Healing Hearts podcast and all of the great work you're doing?
Sure. Thank you. So you can find me on Instagram at Liz Quinn Heals, all one word. And then my website is the same thing. It's just lizquinnheals.com. And that is where you're going to find all of the information. All of the things on the Healing Hearts podcast is right there as well. Anything about Held with Our Hearts, the book that we co-authored on, which is a beautiful collection of stories of lost moms and resources and journaling prompts. It's hopefully going to be in the hands of lots moms this upcoming year, in hospitals and things like that. And then working on other collaborations and things like that. I would love to have you.
Amazing work, Liz. Thanks again. I really hope today's conversation encouraged you. Please subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode, because trust me, we have more incredible guests and conversations coming your way. And if this episode blessed you, I would love it if you just take a moment, leave a rating and a review. It helps more women find this show and join this community. And that means everything to me. And until next time, keep highlighting your healing.